Welcome to the Folkkeeper's Hearth, where timeless tales and ancient lore come alive. Gather round as we explore the myths, legends, and fables that have been passed down through the generations, keeping us connected to our ancestors and the old ways. Do you have your cup of tea? Have you pulled up a chair? It is time. Let us begin. Before we delve into the great sagas of the Norse gods, we must first meet them. These were not mere characters in old stories, but divine beings once honored by the people of the North, guardians of the world, shapers of fate, and rulers of the sacred realms. Though centuries have passed, the veneration of the Aesir has never truly faded. Across the world, many among the northern folk have begun to honor them once more, embracing the faith of our ancestors and rekindling the old ways. These are not just myths. They are the echoes of a living tradition, a connection to the past that still speaks to us today. Now we journey to Asgard itself, to stand in the halls of the Aesir and learn of the gods and goddesses who once ruled over land, sea, and the sacred realms. This is their story. The Heroes of Asgard. Chapter 1. The Aesir. Part 1. A giant, a cow, and a hero. In the beginning of ages, there lived a cow whose breath was sweet and whose milk was bitter. This cow was called Audhumla, and she lived all by herself on a frosty, misty plain where there was nothing to be seen but heaps of snow and ice piled strangely over one another. Far away to the north it was night. Far away to the south it was day. But all around where Audhumla lay, a cold, gray twilight reigned. By and by a giant came out of the dark north and lay down upon the ice near Audhumla. "You must let me drink of your milk," said the giant to the cow. And though her milk was bitter, he liked it well, and for him it was certainly good enough. After a little while the cow looked all around her for something to eat, and she saw a very few grains of salt sprinkled over the ice. So she licked the salt and breathed with her sweet breath, and then long golden locks rose out of the ice, and the southern day shone upon them, which made them look bright and glittering. The giant frowned when he saw the glitter of the golden hair, but Audhumla licked the pure salt again, and a head of a man rose out of the ice. The head was more handsome than could be described, and a wonderful light beamed out of its clear blue eyes. The giant frowned still more when he saw the head, but Audhumla licked the salt a third time, and then an entire man arose, a hero, majestic in strength and marvelous in beauty. Now it happened that when the giant looked full in the face of that beautiful man, he hated him with his whole heart, and, what was still worse, he took a terrible oath, by all the snows of Ginnungagap, that he would never cease fighting until either he or Burr, the hero, should lie dead upon the ground. And he kept his vow. He did not cease fighting until, in time, Burr had fallen beneath his cruel blows. I cannot tell how it could be that one so wicked should be able to conquer one so majestic and so beautiful, but so it was. And afterwards, when the sons of the hero began to grow up, the giant and his sons fought against them too, and were very near conquering them many times. But there was of the sons of the heroes one of very great strength and wisdom, called Odin, who, after many combats, did at last slay the great old giant, and pierced his body through with his keen spear, so that the blood swelled forth in a mighty torrent, broad and deep, and all the hideous giant brood were drowned in it, excepting one, who ran away panting and afraid. After this, Odin called round him his sons, brothers, and cousins, and spoke to them thus: "Heroes, we have won a great victory. Our enemies are dead, or have run away from us. We cannot stay here any longer, where there is nothing evil for us to fight against." The heroes looked round them at the words of Odin. North, south, east, and west, there was no one to fight against them anywhere, and they called out with one voice, "It is well spoken, Odin. We follow you." "Southward," answered Odin, "heat lies, and northward, night. From the dim east the sun begins his journey westward home." "Westward home!" shouted they all, and westward they went. Odin rode in the midst of them, and they all paid to him reverence and homage as to a king and father. On his right hand rode Thor, Odin's strong, warlike eldest son. On his left hand rode Balder, the most beautiful and exalted of his children, for the very light of the sun itself shone forth from his pure and noble brow. After him came Tyr the brave, the silent Vidar, Hodur, who, alas, was born blind, Hermod, the flying word, Bragi, Honir, and many more mighty lords and heroes. And then came a shell chariot, in which sat Frigga, the wife of Odin, with all her daughters, friends, and tirewomen. 11 months they journeyed westward, enlivening the way with cheerful songs and conversation, and at the 12th new moon they pitched their tents upon a range of hills which stood near the borders of an inland sea. The greater part of one night they were disturbed by mysterious whisperings, which appeared to proceed from the sea-coast and creep up the mountainside. But as Tyr, who got up 6 times and ran furiously about among the gorse and brushes, always returned saying that he could see no one, Frigga and her maidens at length resigned themselves to sleep, though they certainly trembled and started a good deal at intervals. Odin lay awake all night, however, for he felt certain that something unusual was going to happen, and such proved to be the case, for in the morning, before the tents were struck, a most terrific hurricane leveled the poles, and tore in pieces the damask coverings, swept from over the water furiously up the mountain gorges, round the base of the hills, and up again all along their steep sides, right in the faces of the heroes. Thor swung himself backwards and forwards and threw stones in every possible direction. Tyr sat down on top of a precipice and defied the winds to displace him, whilst Balder vainly endeavoured to comfort his poor mother Frigga. But Odin stepped forth calm and unruffled, spread his arms towards the sky, and called out to the spirits of the wind, "Cease, strange Vanir," for that was the name by which they were called. "Cease your rough play, and tell us in what manner we have offended you, that you serve us thus." The winds laughed in a whispered chorus at the words of the brave king, and after a few low titterings, sank into silence. But each sound in dying grew into a shape. One by one, the strange, loose-limbed, uncertain forms stepped forth from caves, from gorges, dropped from the tree-tops, or rose out of the grass, each wind-gust a separate van. Then Njord, their leader, stood forward from the rest of them and said, "We know, O mighty Odin, how you and your company are truly the Aesir, that is to say, the lords of the whole earth, since you slew the huge wicked giant. We too are lords, not of the earth, but of the sea and air, and we thought to have had glorious sport in fighting one against another. But if such be not your pleasure, let us, instead of that, shake hands." And as he spoke, Njord held out his long cold hand, which was like a windbag to the touch. Odin grasped it heartily, as did all the Aesir, for they liked the appearance of the good-natured gusty chief, whom they begged to become one of their company and live henceforth with them. To this Njord consented, whistled goodbye to his kinsfolk, and strode cheerfully along amongst his new friends. After this they journeyed on and on, steadily westward, until they reached the summit of a lofty mountain called the Meeting Hill. There they all sat round in a circle and took a general survey of the surrounding neighborhood. As they sat talking together, Balder looked up suddenly and said, "Is it not strange, Father Odin, that we do not find any traces of that giant who fled from us, and who escaped drowning in his father's blood?" "Perhaps he has fallen into Niflheim, and so perished," remarked Thor. But Njord pointed northward, where the troubled ocean rolled, and said, "Yonder, beyond that sea, lies the snowy region of Jotunheim. It is there the giant lives, and builds cities and castles, and brings up his children, a more hideous brood even than the old one." "How do you know that, Njord?" asked Odin. "I have seen him many times," answered Njord, "both before I came to live with you, and also since then, at night, when I have not been able to sleep, and have made little journeys to Jotunheim to pass the time away." "This is indeed terrible news," said Frigga, "for the giants will come again out of Jotunheim and devastate the earth." "Not so," answered Odin. "Not so, my dear Frigga, for here upon this very hill we will build for ourselves a city, from which we will keep guard over the poor earth, and from whence we will go forth to make war upon Jotunheim." "That is remarkably well said, Father Odin," observed Thor, laughing amidst his red beard. Tyr shouted, and Vidar smiled, but said nothing. And then all the Aesir set to work with their whole strength and industry to build for themselves a glorious city on the summit of the mountain. For days and weeks and months and years they worked, and never wearied, so strong a purpose was in them, so determined and powerful were they to fulfill it. Even Frigga and her ladies did not disdain to fetch stones in their marble wheelbarrows, or to draw water from the well in golden buckets, and then with delicate hands to mix the mortar upon silver plates. And so that city rose by beautiful degrees, stone above stone, tower above tower, height above height, until it crowned the hill. Then all the Aesir stood at a little distance and looked at it and sighed from their great happiness. Towering at a giddy height in the center of the city rose Odin's seat, called Air Throne, from whence he could see over the whole earth. On one side of Air Throne stood the Palace of Friends, where Frigga was to live. On the other rose the glittering Gladsheim, a palace roofed entirely with golden shields, and whose great hall, Valhalla, had a ceiling covered with spears, benches spread with coats of mail, and 540 entrance gates, through each of which 800 men might ride abreast. There was also a large iron smithy, situated on the eastern side of the city, where the Aesir might forge their arms and shape their armor. That night they all supped in Valhalla, and drank to the health of their strong new home, the city of Asgard, as Bragi, their chief orator, said it ought to be called. Thank you for joining me for this Northern tale, based on the retellings found in the Heroes of Asgard by Annie and Eliza Keary, a public domain work first published in the 19th century. This is just the beginning of our journey through the old tales of the Aesir. We'll return to their stories in future episodes, weaving them in among other myths and legends from across the folk traditions of Northern Europe. Until next time, may the old ways guide you, and may the voices of our ancestors never fade.